Can you tell when you listen, as it's going on, can you tell if it's
that's what I should do.
messed up or not?
Well, yeah, but then for some reason, they just, off their own accord, will just decide to stop recording.
Yeah, that is... I don't know, but on the other hand, like, I remember a friend of mine said she was kissing. This is years ago, and they turned on all the street lights.
By kissing?
That sort of thing. I've done that before.
Right.
Lights that don't work.
Uh-huh.
So you affect the electricity around you.
Through kissing? Or through
Or through emotion, through intensity.
Right, okay, yeah, you make them flicker.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think you're special that way, is it? Or
No, I'm not. No, someone else mentioned it to me first, and I'm like, yeah. Yeah, we aren't independent from all these things.
I know, we're not. No. But street lights?
That's what she said. I didn't know street lights. She said that. That she is an extremely unusual person. She's exactly like Mary Poppins.
Right, you can imagine it happening.
Yeah, she was very strange. Yeah, like otherworldly person.
Right. Well, why? Tell us about her.
Her? She was my Alexander technique teacher. Which I know Jude was talking about, or was training in that. So yeah,
Jude Spankin.
Yeah.
You listened to that one?
Yeah.
Wasn't she amazing?
Oh my god. I know, I was intimidated. I was a bit like, oh, she's so interesting.
Well, yeah. Exactly.
I was like, hi,
Exactly.
Bar. Hi, Bar.
Well, she's not even that good.
At what?
She's entry level. Interestingness. She's entry level. I mean,
Shall I leave now? Shall I just throw down my little
no,
fluffy...
all you have to do is be as interesting as she said you were on the phone. Just be as interesting as she said you were.
Oh, man. Are you listening? He sets his guests at ease.
They're up there going.
God, yeah, the moral compass. Is this fair?
You up there listening, big guy?
Oh.
No, it wasn't about you. You've woken him up for a start.
Good. Everyone needs waking up.
What are we talking about?
Well...
This book you're relentlessly pushing, I guess.
Oh, I am. Which, I like to have a project.
Yeah.
I go from project to project, and I am making my project. The relentless pushing is a sort of
that's the project
challenge.
in itself, isn't it?
That's the project for this year, because frankly, like, the reality is, my climbing sucks, and I haven't written a word since.
Right, yeah. But now you're an entrepreneur.
Would I say an entrepreneur? I think I would describe Crispin as that. I would never describe myself as that.
Right, yeah.
I'm way too responsive. I sort of don't think I initiate very much. I kind of get compelled into doing things. I usually fight it, even though it's the best thing to do. So no, entrepreneur would not fit like a kind of like...
Right, okay, yeah. I'm just saying that in response to the fact you're not climbing, you're not riding. I was tossing you a lifeline there.
Yeah. I don't know. I was thinking of that on the way up, because I had a long drive, which somehow I made longer. And I was thinking on the drive exactly that. Like, what am I talking about? Then, because I'm quite responsive, I'm like, it's okay. I'll just answer whatever you ask me. I don't have a particular agenda. So, but then it does, then I'm asking myself the questions, and it is a bit weird. Like, having pulled it together, the book pulled together strands that didn't necessarily fit, like climbing and writing, and then I did a master's recently in intersectionality, so that went into it, and things that were completely disparate came together in the book. And now I have a sort of sense of internal exhaustion.
Right,
like when you get to the top and you just lay down flat on the top of the cliff. Yeah. And all I feel is like the sun and the waves, and like I've just sort of collapsed in some sort of little way. But then I can feel there's something else will emerge, which is usually a surprise.
Yeah. Be open. I've just had a surprise. Like, I won't go into the details, but something just landed in my lap that I needed something to happen, and something just landed in my lap.
Yeah.
And for the other person involved, a stranger, it landed in their lap as well.
Yeah.
It was a pretty significant thing, landed in both laps.
There's something about intention, isn't it? Like these different things, because we talk about effort and train, you know, some sort of focused effort for a focused outcome. But I think we're both aware of a world of serendipity where, like, yes, having an intention and putting effort in, like, I'm a trier, but I'm super aware that, like, you might try in one direction and the effect comes out somewhere completely unexpected.
Yeah. And that's a climbing thing, is sort of failure, the sort of joy of failure.
I know, and the struggle again. This thing, we're like, why do you struggle? Why do I struggle with something that I know intellectually is correct?
Yeah.
Or like failure. If I think our culture struggles with failure. I was certainly brought up where failure was bad, whereas that is clearly almost the opposite. Failure is failure is your guidance. Failure is your focus and your mirror, and like everything. You need your boundaries. Kids need their boundaries. Or you kind of, who's your cat?
This is Daisy.
Hello, Daisy.
Hello. Had to say hello. Yeah. Anyway, so you've got a book here called Feeling for Rock, and I thought our chat would be based around your book, so I'll ask you to read a few bits out.
Okay.
Why don't you just read one out? Let's just get stuck in.
Oh, do you have one that you like? Do you have a
No, I'm letting you be the...
Okay, you can see that I've prepared a lot.
And God, you're one of those people, are you?
Look at it. It's like... I put the page numbers of ones I liked. Okay, right. So this chapter I chose because it's sort of the book sort of slightly hinges on it because it's called Love, Rock is the Earth's Truth, which has a hyperbole about it, which I like. All the chapters are headed by emotions.
Right.
With no number or particular, order, sequence, hierarchy, or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, rock is the Earth's truth. You can't bullshit on a trad lead. There can be any amount of talk beforehand, but once the leader is tracing a line over the curving sheet of rock above, you get to see how they are. Not just as a climber, but as a person. Are they bold or timid? Jerky or balletic? Logical or illogical? Careful or reckless? Loud and attention-seeking, or silent and gripped? You see how they are, this particular day, in this moment, out in the sun-dappled afternoon. I love this rawness. It's the key that takes climbing from a bit of exercise into the existential sphere. We are stripped down and questions are asked. Who are we? Why are we here? Now religion is fallible, meditation so deathly dull, where do we look for guidance? The numbing cushion of comforts and convenience smothers us all, pleasantries cloud our conversations. What is the reality of life on this planet? That we can die at any second, that we breathe air, that it's beautiful. Rock is the earth's truth. It is the molten heart come to light. The deepest layers scoured out. Every fragment of rock has been made in torment, crushed, boiled, compressed, and millennia later revealed in agony, squeezed through the earth crust, cut through by ice, whipped by winds. What else in the landscape has suffered as much? Trees grow gently. The grass photosynthesizes at its own pace. Water in seas and glaciers and lakes and skies changes form but slips through these various metamorphoses without much strife. All stages are fully reversible, but rock is different. Every outcrop is a monument to pain, each gorge a terrific scar. And the rock will stick its neck out, telling that truth. The lone pinnacles, the desert towers of Utah, the low black granite tors of Dartmoor, the sliced open anatomy of Yosemite, everything is laid bare. I find a good deal of comfort in rock. It has suffered this much and still stands tall. It will shelter me like an older brother should. and for a time my small anxieties are put into perspective, put aside. Climbing a rock face is to connect for a time with the cutting edge of life, with the bones of the world. No padding, no fluff. In everyday life, where else do we see people with so little guard? Where they are crying, yelling, soiling their pants in fear. Maybe you see these things in a war zone or a funeral, occasionally when someone's very, very drunk. When do you see people trying this hard? Grunting and hyperventilating, disco-legged and super pumped, no regard to prettiness, still keeping going, giving it their all. It's an honour to share these levels of revelation with another human being. We are human beings. We're terrified. We love. The tiling of your bathroom is of no interest to me. I don't care if my clothes aren't stylish. No, I don't recognise your brand of car. Let us get down to the truth. We could die at any second. We breathe air. It is beautiful.
Huh? Cool. And you think, is that where you find your truth, on rock faces? That's where you find yours?
Yeah. I really do. Because there is that perspective going beyond the sort of this human nonsense and the kind of internal chatter. Yeah, I do. I've had a long relationship with rock that's extremely... It's all those things, like it's passionate and it's safe, weirdly.
Yeah. Do you like the you that you are when you're climbing?
Oh my God, all of it. Like,
right.
Yeah, like when it's all flowing, it's just the best. But, you know, like... When I was in Go-Kart the other day and I tried leading this VS and I got lost and I was fumbling and I took forever to set up the relay and I was a bit like, you're so like, not quite incompetent, but just like, but the rock's still patient.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's a very forgiving, well, I say that's very forgiving, but it's, like all of us, we can't. That idea that we can die at any second, we don't choose particularly. You can try, but yeah, I know someone who's 20, perfectly healthy, and last month just died of a. They don't even know. They're doing an autopsy. It's like a switch.
Right.
Like you could be as safe as you want and still just keel over.
Yeah. And that's one of the things you like, the sort of the reminder that.
Yeah.
It's temporary.
Yeah.
And there's always danger in it, isn't there? And a rock can fall on your head, and
there's always danger in everything. It's just obscured.
Yeah.
Like crossing the road, the drive here.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, sitting here.
It's obscured, and people get appalled by the idea they might die. We're all gonna die, and they can die anytime. And the rock will, decide.
Yeah. And that's the thing with all the stuff that's chipped away at the rock and shaped the rock and made it that, and you can sort of point to the rock in yourself as well. All those times in life, scraped the.
Yeah, we're like a really tiny, ridiculous micro reflection of like how that geology is being created is so. There's so much attrition in it.
Yeah. Is that what life is? That journey towards attrition until you sort of get rubbed away?
I have to say, it feels a little bit like that.
Yeah.
It does feel a bit like that. Like, I get tired sometimes. So, do we need brollies with the electrical equipment? Will we suddenly... It is raining a little bit.
I don't think we'll catch fire or anything again. Let's see how heavy it gets.
It sounds like it's...
Yeah.
You're okay, Sarah? I'm fine.
You'd start telling the truth then, wouldn't you?
Exactly what you want to ask. I'll tell you. I don't know his name.
And so what role has this book got in all that, of sort of letting out your flaws and worries? And
a really good question. Well, I would say, unfortunately, like most things, the book was a compulsion. This is the idea where I kind of do everything because I'm forced into it. where I did several things. Like I was already thinking of writing the book when I did the masters, and that's a 2-year masters. And then when that finished, I didn't have anything particularly clear, and I had no other excuses. So I sort of thought I'd better pull it together. And I found some chapters that were 10 years old.
Right.
So I think it presented itself.
Yeah.
How to say? I mean, I don't know. I just did it. Yes, there wasn't a plan. I just did it because it happened.
Right. We'll have one more reading and just talk about the journey of making the book, shall we?
Yeah, go on then. Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, sorry, I should start drinking tea. You asked for reading there, didn't you?
Yeah.
How about a poem?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's have Braille because we're up in Sheffield.
Ah, yeah.
Driven up today. So, short poem called Braille, and it's a chapter called Relief Touch. A braille of comprehension, fingers assessing the meaning of fine-grained friction, subtle edges and crystals, cross-referencing the ink-cut at the back of the crack, understanding the import of out-of-sight overlaps. A glossary of touch, deciphering limestone hieroglyphics or the art house literature of grit.
Beautiful. Braille, big Braille trail, isn't it?
Yeah. My touch.
Yeah. So you've done this book. I'm partially asking because I'm compiling my stories together in a book at the minute. And it's just at a very early stage of it. And it's kind of, I'm looking forward to doing it. Just want to ask you about how you did that, because you said some of the stuff's 10 years old.
Yeah.
So you got this collection of writing, and then you do some specifically for it.
Yes.
So at what point did you tip into finding you're doing a book?
Oh, yeah. Well, when I had no more excuses.
Right.
So then I had time.
Yeah.
So I was like, then I started. That is true. I started, and then, because once I set myself to pull it together, basically I went to my computer, printed everything off. I must have done I can't even remember now, some sort of brainstorm for the gaps.
Right.
Because there were gaps.
By yourself.
The feelings and the gaps. And then I started writing in the gaps.
Right.
And then I went to Pembroke for a bit. And I remember very clearly because I had a lot of kind of passages that filled the gaps in sensations or feelings, emotions that were there, but I hadn't articulated. And then I printed everything out. That was a big thing, even though it wasn't anything that held together yet. Because once it's printed, you could shuffle it into an order. Yeah. And I'm much better with paper than online. So then it started being a thing, an artifact. You've got a file. Yeah. So once you've got a file, you're halfway there to a product kind of thing. And once it had been in some sort of running order. How did you find the running order?
Well, I've not got a running order. That's what I want to. The way I think about this thing is it's each story. They're all totally separate stories.
Yeah.
But they're tracks in an album. That's the way I'm thinking about it. I'm putting together an album.
Yes, that's what I did.
Right.
When I was...
Because you're musical, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm musical. And I was a bit like, what are my influences? Because I don't really read climbing books.
I never read anything.
No? Yeah. Well, I do. I read literature.
Right.
Literature, darling. I read literature. I read kind of... But it's often like... Anyway, so yeah, I read literature. And but I don't read climbing books because that... the model never really suited. I've read The Living Mountain, and then read it again, being like, oh my God, just because of the language so beautiful, what she articulated, the repetition of it, the immersion of it was just like, oh wow. But yeah, music. And if I wanted it to be structured, there's two influences on structure. One, Beyonce. Actually, no, the structure would be Claudia Rankine's Citizen. Oh my God, what a book. We could talk about that because I just went mad for that book. And in terms of content almost, would be a Beyonce album.
Right.
Which, that's...
So if you think of Beyonce album, what are you thinking about?
The thing with that is her level of passion, and with her, so particularly I'm thinking the album Lemonade, which is amazing to my mind, is the level of complete passion without any gesture towards reconciling it. So there's contradictions wild through it, because I wish she was having a bit of a ropey spell with Jay-Z. So there are tracks which are like, you're ditched, you're out. I never want to see, you forget that, mate. And others being like, you're everything I ever wanted. I'll give up everything for you. And another one being, and the ricochet between them, because we exist in these contradictions, and I exist with these contradictory passions that are volatile. They're not grey. They're not a sort of, a compromise in the middle. They're just not. So the book's full of contradictions, and the book's full of, this, that, the other, and it's like, that's it. That's it. It's a Beyonce album, know. What's the question?
Just interested in the sort of how you put it together. And I'm thinking myself about the same thing, how you put things together, and what order you put stuff in.
And I was very happy when I came up with the idea, because ideas come up in an instant, don't they? They're not a logical progression. They're not a sort of grey grind towards something. They happen like this. They usually happen when I'm like running or out or doing something else that I shouldn't be doing. And the idea of having the emotions as the hook, that answered everything. So I started having the emotions as the hook. Very late came to the title. Had all these other titles I couldn't quite find. And when you have a feeling in your gut, and you when you got it right, and when you got it wrong. That's how I work with words, with the poems. And you're like, that line's not good enough. And you start ditching things, you start messing with things, because it has, and in your gut when you're settling, when you're like, oh, that'll do. So
and it needn't be perfect, but that's
when you can live with it. When the gnarling in your stomach stops. It's like, oh, that'll.
And sometimes I've done things and given them names. I think, it's not a great name, but I'm just not going to find the right name for this. I'm just not finding it.
No.
So I'll stick with that name will have to do. It's not the perfect name.
But you know it, don't you? And then kind of later, like, I'll work on my poems or whatever. And when I look through them and I change them, it's quite funny to have a book. Because I read through it and I'll be like, I'll cut those lines. I'll do that with those words. And I'm sort of, I compulsive. I sort of make notes of the things I would change if there was ever a reissue or like I can't stop.
So you got this all together. I'm just talking about the sort of the actuality of making it. So you got this thing. You got all your files and all your Word documents, and think, okay, that's it.
And the photos and bits and bobs.
Right.
Then I was extremely fortunate in that a friend of a friend.
I'm asking this because there's not many. There didn't seem to be so many books published by women like this. And it'd just be sort of, if anyone listened for like advice of how do you go about doing it. I'm sort of asking as much about.
Oh, I see. Well,
about this as opposed to the emotional, whatever, all aspects. I'm asking about all aspects of the journey.
The practical thing was a blocker for me because, I struggle with practical, real world things in a way. Words can fall out, but so I'm afraid then that's basically I had help through luck. So I, how do you pass? I don't know what that tells people, to do that, because then a friend of a friend ran a micro publisher, and he liked the book, and it was him. He had the skills to turn it into a book.
Right.
I had no idea there was so much involved. Choosing the typesetting. He lived in Birmingham. I drive up and down to Birmingham and stuff. But choosing the typesetting, choosing the layout, like the software you need to do layout, which is completely different from Word documents. The way you have the split words, the way you break it across pages to kind of to make the reader read on, to do the layout from page, to side, to the this, and the complexity of layout astounded me.
Right.
And I'm afraid he did all of that.
Okay.
Would be completely, and that's what's turned it into a book that looks like
maybe
a book.
So maybe what you're saying is accept the fact that these are important things that you might not have, which skills you do have and which skills you don't have. I've done another book called Border Britain, and I've designed the cover, and just every time I looked at the cover I thought, that just looks like a cover designed by me, and that's all it's ever going to look like. And it needs to be better than that, and that's as good as I can do, and I can see this not very good. Then you send it out to the designer, can you do some of this? And goes back, you go, wow, look at that. Look at that, that's amazing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Your cover always reminds me of, do you know the video for Kendrick Lamar's Humble?
No.
There is a bit, and he's on this tiny world cycling around it.
Right.
And it's got that same sort of whole imagery in it. And
again, but just the way the sort of the words are on the page and the colour of the letters and stuff like that, it's like...
it's beyond, I know. So you either need to... I mean, I got a really lucky break with that. Yeah, he was super helpful.
Yeah. But it's interesting just to acknowledge the fact that there's so many sides to it. It's not just writing a book. But I know ultimately you self-published this, didn't you?
Yeah, the publishing was one aspect of his business. The other aspect was big involvement, amazingly, in weightlifting.
Right.
So he was a coach and brought out books in that field.
Right.
And I think he just got too busy.
Right.
So it came to a point where he was too busy. He had too much on to do that. And I couldn't move on until I got the book out, so I was a bit like, well, all right then.
Right.
You know, I could have then tried to take it to other publishers.
I could kidnap him. Like, just sort of,
What
the hell can I could kidnap him? I could.
Yeah.
No, that wouldn't work because I don't know where to put him. I could maybe
Kidnap his cat. I mean,
kidnap his
anything.
cat. I could give him like £10,000, but I'm God, what could I? You sort of think, when you're in these desperate situations, you're open to anything, but then no, that wouldn't work because I don't have a gun. No, this sort of stuff. But I need to get this book published.
I need to get it published, and there's the point where with me, and like you say, I've done music. Like my music was so comically non-profitable.
Right.
Like they know people make music, so you don't get paid to do gigs. You might get like 2 bottles of beer, you know.
Right.
But by this time, you've paid X £100 for your guitar.
Yeah.
You've rented a studio. You've rehearsed every day for 2 years.
Yeah.
You've paid for your own CDs to be produced, and then you're like arrive to sound check at 5. You wait 2 hours for something. You sound check. You sit there till you play your gig finally at 9, then you can't clear the stage until the final gig, so you leave at 1.
You're right.
And you've had 2 bottles of beer.
Yeah.
It's like what's that thing with the two New Zealand guys? Yes! They're taking a lift and they painted no one in a lift, and I was watching. I had to stop watching after that. I was like, they've seen my life.
And it's sad.
People have to be in the lift. It's not like they've been chosen to go in the lift and listen to them. It's like
and the sad reality is the person who owns the place is saying, look, your music is only worth 2 bottles of beer to me. I'm sorry, I'm not judging your music, but that's all it's worth to me here tonight. And instead of
and they can,
tough.
That's how it is with you. So I was slightly reconciled, and I would make no money. This is not lucrative.
Yeah.
And my partner just looked at me after a while because I was trying to break even with this book, and he looks at me and goes, the thing is, he goes, writing is your hobby, and hobbies cost money.
You're right.
I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, true, isn't it?
It is like and the horrible thing, like with making the music, is this
my hobby is I'm an entrepreneur. Cost me a fortune.
It's so expensive. I mean, like the hours put into writing, and then the thing and everything, and the hours put into.
The thing is, it looks like a job, doesn't it? It does look like a job from the outside. It feels like a job. And that's the problem. It's not like sort of playing football or sort of gardening. It looks like
fun.
It looks like a job.
Oh,
and it feels like a job. So then when it turns out it's not a job, it's just a waste of time. It's kind of I didn't really.
It's really hard to justify apart from this feeling of compulsion. Like, why do you write?
I just if I knew that, it'd stop.
You can't help it.
No, I just can't. It's not too much writing, but just I'm compelled to create things.
Yes.
And there's no, and I sort of begrudgingly accept that about myself.
Me too.
That I'll get an idea and I'll just have to go and follow it through.
Yes.
And if I don't, it'll still be there until I do.
And also, you're blocked. Did you get blocked for doing anything else until you
Not
you're
particularly.
forced into it?
Yeah, I know you're forced into it, but I don't get. I've got millions of ideas. I've got so many ideas.
So then you do other ones.
Yeah, I follow enough of them through.
You do actually.
Yeah,
you're very productive.
Yeah.
He's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
A proper one.
Yeah. None of them are. I just remember seeing one time I did this amazing thing called Ape Index, which was a series of lectures comedy lectures in the pub down the road here, and they're just fucking awesome. They're just a crack with an idea. Everyone just would come and get lashed and have these speakers on, and they're just amazing. And the vibe was a bit like Glastonbury in the 90s. people would jump over the fence, and that's what made it so good. Is people would just come and stand at the back and sort of refuse to pay, and yet you just shrug your shoulders. Okay, well, that's just what it is. I'm making something amazing here, and I want to make money, but that's not what it's about. So you don't make much money, and it was like legendary. And then Matt Heeson started doing it a couple of years later. Went along and watched and said, "He's making money here, isn't he?" And it was from.
Do you think he is?
Well, again, not making a fortune. No one makes a fortune, but he was sort of, people weren't coming in for free and stuff like that, and he sort of did it in a different way. Yeah, it was the exact same.
To try and make it so you weren't losing money, like it.
Yeah. But just interesting to see and I wouldn't have wanted it to be like his, and he obviously wanted his to be like his and not like mine. But the way I wanted it was the way it was. But ultimately, there wasn't money coming from it.
No,
and that's. And I still look back and fondly on it to this day.
Well, it is nice. Having like having produced a thing, there is a nice feeling about like these albums that never got sold. You can still Google them, and there'll be one in Japan that's for sale for kind of $36 or something. No one will ever buy, or someone's listened to a stream in Finland or something. It's kind of, I don't know. It's like a little offspring.
Yeah. And it's and maybe like an offspring. It's you manifest, isn't it? It's.
I would actually, I've never really felt that with children, in particular in mine.
Okay, no,
they're not that chip off the block thing.
No, okay, I'm not. But I feel the creative things that are me manifest. Not so much. Yeah. Other, but that's because that's what I do. Is kind of.
Yeah, just kick stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's for me, it's the process of doing it, not the thing. You know what I mean? It's this interview, not the downloads. It's sitting behind a computer, not the book. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, like the beautiful mode, like writing is beautiful, particularly poetry.
Right.
Like that, because so going back to something I started talking about earlier, when I was looking at the structure book and laid it out, and I realised a lot of these passages, to structure through the book, they all needed to be poems. So that was a really interesting thing, because I usually would write a poem because I write a poem. But to write a poem almost by commission, that felt really unusual, right? Like, okay, this morning I'm going to write 3 poems on touch. It's like, what? Breaking down these passages, messing them around. And I really enjoyed that sort of task. I like responding to tasks. And the most interesting one that was movement one, because what I thought I was going to write about with movement was dance. And the first one's called Dance or something, I can't remember, I think Dance. But I thought that was what movement was. And I kept writing poems, trying to get out the dance. But what I worked is I was trying to articulate the way I felt. So I start with that visceral thing, and I'm trying to articulate exactly to replicate that feeling as someone else. And by the time I'd written 3 or 4, I realised I wasn't done. All of them weren't about dance. They were all about fighting or war or some kind of like... It really surprised me. It wasn't what I was expecting. And I loved that it was like a sort of... That came out through the deepness of the process or something, rather than me thinking I was writing about something. What came out didn't articulate that very well.
No.
Right, so movement, like a lot of us use the metaphor, I think, of dance for what it's like, climbing on the rock, the partnership with the rock, the movement of dance. But when I started writing about the movement of the feeling inside, it had much more violence in it, which surprised me.
Yeah,
and that's what came out, and that's what's in the book. It wasn't what I was expecting.
Right.
So I enjoyed the surprise.
Yeah.
Of that, not knowing what's coming out.
Right. Yeah. Good. And then, so you got your thing typeset, your man typeset it, and then what happened then? And then he said, "I'm not publishing your stupid book."
Yeah. Your stupid book, non-lucrative project. You can have it back.
Show business. Show business.
It is, isn't it?
Show business.
It's not all about the
Right.
business, right? But it all worked out. So then he was very sweet to me, gave me the files. But the one thing he asked is that I looked after the guy who had proofread. And so that's my friend William, who I just called on him on the way here and picked up some books because he is just brilliant with words. He loves words too. And we're doing a fab thing where he's posting out the books for me. So because I'm always off in the van, kind of climbing and travelling, whatever, whereas he's more settled, working with words. And so we kind of have an arrangement that gives him some minuscule amount of money back for his investment. It's like probably more of a burden than an actual reward.
Around the same sort of figure as, what do you call it, Spotify pay.
Yeah, exactly. It literally is. Then he described...
One Spotify unit for every... Okay, if you send out these books, I'll pay you for every book you send out. Right, okay, great.
1p.
Yeah, per 100.
And literally was like that. But, yeah, I think...
And then he sort of invoices in, you take an admin fee off it all.
But it still feels like a sort of partnership. I like the idea that on the journey I still have someone who's kind of on this journey
He's
with me.
paid even worse than you.
Well, at least he's made a profit. And he probably doesn't by the time he took the petrol that he went to come down. Yeah, someone's paid worse than me. He described our project as the lean-to against the cottage industry.
So you got it printed? Did you take your things and find a printer? How did you find a printer? What did you do for that?
I copied what the publisher had done. It was who he worked with. I literally used the least possible initiative.
Well, this podcast might not be working so well as a practical guide of publishing your own book.
Yeah, seriously not. So, well, the printers are Ingram Spark, and they're specifically for self-publishers. So you can do a book with an IBSN and all that, or they do one where you can kind of do a book in your own way. I'm sure they could do it just with, it'll look less flash, but it won't, just to produce half a dozen books for you and your family or whatever, if people want to do that way. They have loads of links for self-publishing and knowledge and connections to people who have those other skills that fill the gaps on their website, because it is especially for self-publishers.
Right.
So that, even though I don't know how to do these things, if you're keen and went on that website and had a bit of money, is the problem, isn't it?
I'll fill in some, because I've published books.
Yeah, go on.
You sort of publishing a book basically means you pay the printer.
There you go.
Essentially, that's what it is.
You
You're the person. You're the person who stumps up the cash.
Correct.
For the printer on. Whereas if you go through a publisher, then you give them the files. They tell you how much money you're going to get.
Yes.
And then they take the chance, the financial chance, and do all the technical stuff. But self-publishing just means you do that yourself.
Yeah.
There's actually not a lot to it. You'll find out, like the one you described. I'm sure they're very helpful.
Yeah.
And they'll sort of talk you through it. And
well, I think they're based in America.
okay.
So actually getting through to them on the phone is a bit of a nightmare. They were responsive by email, but there's a bit time difference. There's a cost to the calls. So actually, they printed them in Milton Keynes, but they didn't want you to go and collect. So do you know what I mean? I like meeting people face to face. I think there's a more information that way. I like to have chats to people. My favourite way of learning things is by finding someone who really knows about it and talking to them. So yeah, I don't know.
But anyway, it's an achievable thing, isn't it? Self-publishing.
Yeah.
And you had some help along the way, but everyone can have some help along the way.
Yeah.
And would you recommend it as an experience to do it yourself? How much did you pay to have? How many published?
I had 340 books published, which cost, like, so far, you want the figures?
I don't know,
Like, even with that and other bits and bobs and postage, somehow it's like $1,000, $2,000.
Yeah.
Even, I don't know why. I think there's other stuff that costs money, weirdly.
Right,
it's hard to...
Yeah.
I think postage does a thing. And then there's envelopes and IBSNs and...
Yeah. Did you get an IBSN, ISBN?
Yeah. Is it
IS, yeah.
Can I not even say that the right way round? I'm a pro, kids. Do what I say. You walk into a publisher and say you want those letters in a different order. Sound like you know what you're doing. Yeah. Listen to no.
Anyway, I'm really glad I self-published this book, Butter Britain. I did everything myself. Everything was my own doing on it, and I really loved that. I really loved it. Yeah.
What do you like?
What did I like? Just complete control. And when I think about it, every decision was my decision. Every letter, there isn't a thing in that book that it wasn't my responsibility.
Yeah.
And you could ask people advice, but no one cares enough to sort of that their advice is just an opinion. That's all it is. You've still got to make every decision. And I thought that was kind of real stressful, but it was really cool and sort of very, I did all that without just from learning how to do it.
But you didn't do all the layout and stuff.
Yeah.
You did do all the layout.
Everything.
You literally did with all the software and all the bits. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's massive.
Yeah.
Well done.
But I couldn't have done it any other way.
No.
Because you can't. You can't.
No.
Because you've got your idea and you know what the idea, and because everything's so on a page of layout, it's also interactive. Every word is related to every image is related to every block of text. Everything, every map, everything. They've all got a relationship, and you might have to cut stuff out of one and add stuff into another, and they all share this page.
And that's like a piece of music, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. I love music, but I'm not musical, if you know what I mean.
You appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know how it works.
I know how to tap a foot.
That'll do. Yeah.
And the journey continues. You're trying to sell it now and get your money back. And
I'm going to kind of try and sell.
What other aims? Is there anything else wrapped up in it? Do you hope it goes out? And
well, I put it in for the competitions, so it's entered for Banff, it's entered to the Board Tasker.
Right.
I'm going to kind of try and promote it a bit up till Christmas, because I genuinely think it's a nice gifty book.
Right.
It's a nice book to just have around, because you can dip into it, can't you? And
yeah.
I've had some really, really nice feedback from people. I've had direct messages from people that have made me glad I did the book.
Yeah.
And so no, I think it's a nice book, and it could have gone out looking more glossy, but it's a sort of black and white, cream and white paperback, because that makes it more affordable.
Right.
You know, it's like, is the price of going into a climate war sort of, and highs and beats, which I like.
Yeah.
You know, egalitarian philosophy.
Yeah.
Make it.
Oh yeah, I got to say, a reason I ask is I got some sort of message from someone by Instagram. Pam Rose Cut.
Yeah, I follow her. I don't know if I know her in the real world.
Yeah, well, she messaged to say, can you have Sarah Jane Dobner on the podcast?
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, bless her.
Yeah.
That's really nice. That's really nice.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you.
And she said,
Pam Rose Cut.
do you know? But she's from Bristol, I think.
Is she? I don't know if I know people. You know,
I know
on
what you
Instagram.
mean.
It's like someone just took themselves off, and I'd followed his pictures, and I direct messaged him going, "I always enjoyed your pictures. Do we know each other?" And he went, "No, we don't."
Yeah.
But thanks for the message. But then I messaged someone else who turned out to be JP. Do you know JP? Anyway, who turned out to be someone I did know.
Right.
And we've met each other through the years, because when I first started climbing, I bought my first rack, as you do from a car boot sale. And then years later, met this guy in Bristol and realised it had been his rack.
Right.
He'd had a kind of fit of...
Don't fall.
And then ditched his whole rack, and I bought it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
brilliant.
so there's some people who know, some people who don't. But thank you, Pam Rosecut.
Oh, and Pam Rosecut said,
that.
can you give a shout out to George Herbert? Apparently George has gone through a tough time the last year.
Okay.
So pull yourself together, George. Move on. Come on, George.
You do what you need to do, George.
Don't listen to your George. Pull yourself together.
Right down. Lie in the sun and the
Get
thunder.
back out there.
And take your
I
time.
know, a funny thing they got the other day where I was flicking through a climbing mag and I read this nice interview with this woman called Josune Bezeri-Arthur in the 1990s.
Yeah.
She was the first woman to climb 8C plus and 9A and 9A plus and all this sort of stuff is amazing. So she was just an amazing looking climber, like miles ahead of the woman at the time. And I read this nice interview with her, And I took a picture of it. No, just promoting stuff on Instagram. So I took a picture to promote the magazine because I write for it sometimes. Took a photograph and put it on Instagram. I really love this so and so. And then some people said, "Oh yeah, she's a star." And then somebody said, "I'm glad the words made sense." And no, interviews are always interviewed by someone who said, "Oh yeah, cool. Did you write the interview?" She said, "No, I'm Joseph Bizet."
I think I saw it. Yeah. Great.
And then I sort of...
You should have invited him on.
I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, that's the obvious.
And then she said, we had a really nice little chat. Yeah. And then she said, I've said all I want to say in that interview, but thanks all the same. And then I thought, how cool is that? Isn't the internet amazing?
The internet is amazing.
That's just this amazing, like really fun little chat with Josune Bizet, who's this sort of person you saw, like a superhero from 1 or 2 decades ago, and you goes, the internet allows this very immediate thing with somebody. It's just so incredible, isn't it?
It is amazing, and that thing definitely through the book, I've definitely met people or connected with that is a thing, like outside normal spheres, and it's been cool. Like a really good reception in a nice way, because I don't know if you saw a couple of the articles on UKC. There's one called The Perfect Line about new naming and the sort of imperialist sort of colonial kind of gendered aspects of that, and one called Cyborg Climbers about sort of training regimes. Anyway, they sort of kicked off a bit on UKC, and when I last looked, had 71 pages of comments on one of them and like massive dislikes against likes on the little things. Obviously it really touched a nerve and got, just slightly trolled or whatever. Right. So, which I knew, well, I sort of thought would happen, and it sort of did, because I was aware of, that those angles of climbing from being in their world, especially when I started, it was a very sort of male world. Yeah. And so I thought with the book that would have, I'd like those articles are in the book. So I was like, I really thought it would get that kind of like hostility with the reception, but it really hasn't. I've had some really just lovely reception and really nice reviews, and just like my jaws open a little bit. It wasn't what I expected to have it to have it so nice, and actually practical responses to it. So I like speaking to UKC, like the response to that article on Perfect Line, they've removed their racist route names. They've changed them. So they've changed them online, and when books get reprinted, they won't have those racist
well, that's a lot of people are talking about that. I guess not just in response to your article, but it's part of it.
But it was a trigger. It was one of the triggers, and I love that you can do that. I don't know. That made me happy. I think out of anything, that made me happy in terms of what words, what you can do quietly in a bedroom with some words. I appreciate this is not my battle with Sarah Jane. It's like I did this all myself, but like the straw, or like some contribution that you can make a contribution through writing poetry. I always feel slightly guilty that I'm not an activist. I think there's a sort of honour in standing for something, but I've always been. I like all the different sides. I like the complexity, the contradictions, the muddle, the change of things. So activism has never suited me, because you've got to have a banner with one line on it, so people, we need that. And I've always felt a bit of admiration for that while I sidle off out the back. So it's nice that
Horatio at the bridge.
Just off and gone. And, anyway, so responses.
It's such a complex issue, isn't it? All those things are so. It's very complicated, and I suppose when you're older, you sort of. It's just you become aware of the complexities of life and how everything's quite complex and not very straightforward.
I like that so much. I really do. I think you've nailed it there, because like when I started this master's on gender studies and intersectionality, what slightly scared at is that I'd come out like ragingly angry and with injustice, you know, and actually within extremely short time, of about a week after which, you know, the first week on the course where I'd said something probably like transphobic, homophobic and with heteronormal, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, and put my foot in it everywhere, not meaning to. I was a bit like, oh, like, it's tricky being a white man, you know. Like, for a start, you have no idea what everyone else is going on about.
Yeah.
And like, you know, because all your privileges are invisible. Like, how would you know? How would you know? You don't see it, and it hit you, you know. And then I started seeing all my privileges and the way things interact with each other, and it's been a godsend in life, you know, to start seeing that complexity. It is complex, and everyone has vulnerabilities, and yeah, it softened me actually, which is nice.
Yeah. I saw this post of this American female climber, very followed, very articulate woman climber in America.
You're looking at me as if I'm going to come up with some names.
Anyway, she put some post on, and you know, sometimes on Instagram you sort of, if somebody comments on it, it's at the top, and I sort of read this comment with somebody it's kind of like a sort of hateful comment about disrespecting her because of her, like it was just a hateful comment
by someone you knew.
Yeah, with sort of lots of prejudice coming to the surface. Then I went, oh no, and I'm at the stage where I see stuff like that. I go, oh dear.
Yeah, you're like, oh, do you do a kind of like, oh, I might have said that 10 years ago. And do you step in? You see, because that's a stage.
When I read it down, and literally just, he said, I'm really sorry I was drinking last night, and I didn't mean to say that thing, and you're obviously an amazing person. He just said, and I thought he's called himself out, and I said, I wrote underneath it, wakes up in the morning and thinks, was I on the internet last night? That sort of thing. I think it didn't need a sort of,
he'd already
it didn't need the sort of judgment responses that it needed I see.
And actually an affirmation that he had been like, oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the other thing he read is that he said something like, I'm full of jealousy, and that's what he said, and it says that's what it's all about. It's just handling your sort of, how to handle our frailties and our bad emotions that you're not proud of, but everyone's sort of carrying them around all the time, and it's suppressing them is kind of damaging, isn't it? And it's very hard to find a balance of.
Yeah.
You know, what's the healthiest way to be? And I know people who do say that you have to be weighed in. That's a truth. If you see examples of bad behaviour, you have to be weighed in, and that's true. But other truths that contradict that are also true as well, aren't they? There's lots of truths in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's a real sort of all the time observing. Okay, I was down in Decathlon the other day, and do you ever observe yourself and think this is the most interesting thing to observe yourself? I was in Decathlon near the sort of climbing aisle, and this black guy came along, like a sort of black dad sort of thing, and he's looking at the ropes, and he looked at his phone, looking at instructions on the phone. He looked through all these ropes, and I clocked the fact,
he might need a bit of help.
He might need a bit of help. And then sort of, should I go? And then sort of, why am I just doing that just because he's black? And then I think, well, surely what you should be doing is help welcoming these outsiders in to sort of make it more welcome for them, then because it'd be motivated by generosity. But you think, but how would it be perceived? And he looked through all these ropes, and he's wearing like a rab jacket. I thought maybe he's not a climber, maybe because he ended up looking at the white static ropes.
Right.
And I sort of sometimes think, why did Decathlon sell white static ropes? Because somebody might just buy one, take a fall, and they'd fucking kill themselves. They'd die. And he picked up the static ones, and I thought, and I was thinking maybe it's for his daughter who just started climbing or something. And I what they say, but you do know what those ropes are? And I was just observing this whole sort of dialogue of, and then that's prejudice, because thinking that, you know what, because it's such a fine line, isn't it?
It's such a fine line, and it's such a kind of, so that whole thing about being welcoming, like you say, being welcoming, but the whole basis of that is, this is my space, and I'm welcoming
Sure.
you into, and it's just like, and
I
you
know,
can't be
yeah.
right. I think knowing that you cannot be right, and it will depend on that individual, and like you could totally put your foot in it. I put my foot in anyway. I'm sure you do all the time anyway.
All the time.
So, all the time. So, but at least, I think intention is important.
Yeah. I didn't say anything, and I was glad.
His daughter's dead now.
Your daughter's dead.
Because of you.
Because of me. She broke in half.
Because of you.
She just broke in half down the wall. And I killed her. And he's after me.
Yeah, he's going to listen to this. Like, I swear he'll mind me up in the aisle. I wonder what's going on. You know, he goes, murder!
I could hear him laugh as I picked up the static rope. Oh God, it's so beautiful. It's all so beautiful, isn't it? As we sort of look at ourselves moving through life, it's such a joke, isn't it? Such a joke.
It is such a joke, I do like that. I do like it, and I think being older, obviously being teenagers is excruciating, being so wrong all the time. But the older you get, being so wrong all the time is,
I know.
You kind of get used to it. Haven't you?
I know. And you've been wrong so much.
So much.
By now I've been wrong so much. It's kind of.
And now you just learning to have that and be like, move on. Rather than just hate yourself.
That was my fault. Next.
And then kind of, how many, that thing where some people go, you did it wrong once and learn again. I'm a bit like, once? What do you mean once?
And it's this thing where sometimes I think, no, I shouldn't let my inner dickhead make every decision, and I struggle not because my inner dickhead makes most decisions. And I sometimes I try, no, don't let it make all the decisions. Try and make some.
No, I'm interested in your inner dickhead. Talk to me about him.
No, just the
Who
thing
is he?
that the inner dickhead would have sort of said somebody, or I've got a thing where I'll really try to be inappropriate to people.
Oh, on purpose.
On purpose, like sort of the other day I was queuing up for sandwiches, and these two, like sort of just these mad-looking guys have a building site with no shirts on, just covered in tattoos. They look like
that sounds like my boyfriend.
They look like animals, and I was going to, and it was a real sort of posh area. I was queuing up for the sandwich, and I thought, if they're still there when I get, I'm going to say, "What office do you chaps work in?" Just to do stuff like that, just to sort of see what comes out of it. Just to get in trouble. And I just do sort of things, and then walked away. But I was definitely going to do it. I was definitely going to, and I was up in the old Dungeon Gill. There's these two guys get into the van at the back. No, Dungeon Gill's full of tourists.
I don't know it.
It's up in the end of Langdale, and there's these two guys, one guy with curly hair and the other guy, and they just stared out of the van with like goat's eyes, and they just these guys, they just looked like they'd sort of tear people apart, just like sort of dark Cumbrians. And I was going to go up and start talking to you chaps. I was going to go what just to see what happens. Do you chaps? You know what I mean? Just that sort of thing. And I just love doing that. Just to sort of.
And why do you think you need to silence that inner dickhead? He's great.
I know.
He's done a pretty good job with your life. Like, if that's the one that's led your decisions, you've got a beautiful yard.
Not just that, but sort of sometimes you behave very selfishly and react too quickly. And then genuinely, I'm talking more about that. Just when you sort of react selfishly or choose to be offended, I can be very. I observed it myself where you choose the comfort of offence over the what it takes to sort of forgive, and it's I observe it myself and I can see myself doing it. You sort of see yourself. No, you don't need to be like that. And why do you?
Yeah, well, once you see it, it starts changing anyway.
Yeah. That's the dickhead I'm talking about as much as anything. Just this. Now, why not just be kind? Why not just? I'll try and understand rather than sort of adopt a stance and think that your stance is the important thing. Why not grow and learn? It's very easy not to do that, isn't it? Why not just listen to somebody?
The familiarity is comfortable, isn't it? So that's the thing. Yes, but it's interesting you say the driving force. My driving force is definitely my body,
right?
Which is, I think, is unusual to. Knowledge like so people think they make decisions with their head.
Body. I've noticed you're very unusual.
It's a bit odd, isn't it? But so I look at it and I'm a bit like, so many of my life decisions have been made literally by my body.
Right. Example?
Having a child.
Right.
So broody. I had no interest in children. No interest in children ever. Total tomboy, this, that, then. No interest in children. Got broody, all those hormones. Had a child. No interest in children again. Kind of, kind of. Or, just various decisions where my body's been the one that's walked out of places when my head was going, no, I can't do that. It's just gone, And I think that's been an interesting thing to realise or to acknowledge, that it's how little the brain, or you'd you'd want to be more intelligent. We think we want to be more just balanced or something,
right.
But I don't know, maybe that visceral, intelligence, the kind of instinct, maybe.
Yeah. Let's have a reading.
Oh,
you wrote quite a bit about Trevor.
Oh my gosh, so much about Trevor. I adore Trevor.
Yeah.
I'm going to see him tomorrow, actually, which is nice. Yeah, he's over from Spain. So.
I did an interview with him online a few months ago. Yeah. It's beautiful. He's such a beautiful guy, isn't he?
I can't remember if I listened to that one or on Hazel's podcast, because I've certainly listened to...
You're right.
Has it come out?
Yeah, it's been and gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's not in Jan Crack. It's a YouTube thing.
He is smashing.
He's a beautiful person, isn't he?
He's a beautiful person, and he's someone with. He thinks about things. He's got all sorts of. Oh, I can read the start of something that's Trevor, just because I love it so much.
This Trevor Messiah, Bristol climber.
Bristol climber, the only black man in Hartcliffe. Which is an extremely white area of Bristol. Yeah. So, but he's been a coach for years and years and years, and I love his what's the word? What's the opposite of laziness? Industry.
Right.
Like he never. Every time I see him, because he lives abroad now, every time I see him and stay with him, go climb with him, he's always got a new tip. I always come back with a new tip.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
So he could be there just kicking out courses.
Save money in clothes, but invest in accessories.
Yeah. But it's so easy. He's done the same job for 30 years to just repeat what you do, but he's always thinking and codifying and kind of. So he's got more and more into movement, but codifying it, not just what feels right in some instinctive way, but how it works. Anyway, so he worked out this movement sequence one time when I went over. So this chapter is called Excitement, the Secret. Do you want to know the secret? Asked Trevor, as he leans back majestically and clips the second bolt. Yes, I cry. Tell me the secret. Tell me the secret. Trevor smiles beatifically, then infuriatingly returns to the climb, moving with serene grace. He clips the third bolt in an unhurried manner and again smiles down. If he were a mermaid, he would be brushing his golden hair, tempting sailors onto the rocks. I have discovered the secret, he says, enigmatically. And it carries on like that. Eventually, what it is, it's like, God. And he kind of breezes up the rock in the most beautiful way. I wondered if we could read out, because you have an interview in here, which I adore, whether you wanted to read a bit of it, or... No, you don't know it. There was a shake of the head there.
I can't read my own stuff. Hello.
No? You don't mind any of that? No.
What's the gist of it?
Of the interview you gave?
Yeah.
The question I asked for was, how do you feel about rock?
Yeah.
And so you rambled on. And it was lovely. And you said things like, I was up in Northumberland, this is Niall's words, and I saw about 6, 7, 8, 9 pieces of rock that were just as beautiful as anything I'd ever seen before. And your feel for rock is kind of one where you touch and how the texture and temperature of the rock interacts with you, but it's also an emotional feel. That's what you say. And then you carry on and you go, when you see the piece of rock, your muscles and your bones and your tendons feed off even looking at it. They feed off it. And if it's the right piece of rock where you can see the moves and you understand what the moves would be on it, your body doesn't even need to climb it to sustain itself. And from this interaction, this emotional interaction with the piece of rock, so I really feel rock. And when I see rock, my body feels it. When I touch rock, my body feels it. When I remember rock, my body feels it. And that's what you said.
Yeah, I remember it was in a car park. I was talking to you on the phone.
Were you?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was on the phone. I didn't know.
Right.
But I just love that, because I was a bit like, I needn't write the rest of the book. Like a lot of these things where people have given me input, I'm a bit like, yeah, that.
Yeah.
Just that.
Right, yeah.
Lovely. Like the input, there's several interviews in there with different people, and some are really experienced like you. And I managed to get an interview, which was just cool, where I was chatting to 3 people who come into my local bouldering centre, and for 2 of them it was their first day ever. First day ever, their first time climbing ever, and one had been climbing a couple of months, and I managed to interview them, and I love that that's in there as well, because like their initial impressions were like so on point. I was a bit like, that's amazing. So you can get something out of climbing on day 1, and you can get something out of climbing like 20, 30, 40 years later.
Yeah.
Like,
right, yeah.
What a sport. I feel so lucky.
And it's amazing, isn't it? It's amazing,
I didn't find it until I was 30.
Yeah, really?
30.
Yeah.
So old.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'd ran around the world trying to find something that contained me or held me or supported me, just like 30.
Right.
And then I found climbing and it was like, oh my God, thank God.
Right. Just from the first day you found that thing?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, my very first climb I was just purely terrified. Yeah, I don't know. Yes, it must have been slower than a few days, but fairly quick.
Right.
Fairly quick it became just completely central.
Right.
To my life and identity.
Yeah, yeah.
God, I feel grateful to rock. That's a Johnny Dawes line.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah.
God knows what happened to me if I hadn't found rock.
I know,
I'd been a right nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I dread to think.
It's so amazing, isn't it? It's so amazing.
Yeah.
Wherever the rock is, that's what I don't mind. I'm happy to go to really shitty places. They're as good as anything.
Yeah, like during the start of lockdown when we weren't meant to climb, and whatever, and then rained for 3 months, and it was just the worst. And I remember one day when I was just all jangled and electric, and everything was wrong, and I cycled across town in this pouring rain, and I went to the crag, which was soaking wet, and I got off my bike and I just huddled at the bottom of the crag.
Yeah.
Just to be there. Just because that was the only company I wanted.
Right, yeah.
And then I felt better.
Yeah.
So yeah, any old bit of rock, soaking wet. One day
I had an hour to spare in Stony Middleton. I thought I'll do some traversing, and I didn't know what to do, but then I went to this place called the Electric Quarry. Like a scrappy quarry, a massive substation in it. I just abseiled in this route I'd never done called Helmut Schmidt, and just sort of saw where the runners went. And then it was just so, my imagination just went, it's such an amazing time trying to, I'll come back and do this someday, and sort of getting a feel for this amazing climb, and a total little torted block of crag. But the climb, just imagine climbing this thing would be so amazing. I'd love to come back and do this one. Just from abseiling down it, and sort of just so inspiring to get a feel for this amazing route, this polished, slightly loose piece of limestone with a couple of pegs in it.
It's an interesting companion, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
That whole thing of it, just you get so much back. There seems such a dynamic.
Yeah.
The rock.
In terms of,
I don't know, emotionally, or that the interaction with something that it appears, or in our culture we call it an animal. Obviously, in many other cultures, the rocks are credited with sort of spirits or whatever. Like in Western culture, that's not as current.
No. Can you give us a reading?
All right. What would you like? What should we have?
Give us a choice.
We could have...
There's one about... you'd one about partners or belayers or something like that.
Yeah. There's one... I hope this is coming out. Belaying as an act of love.
Go on.
So this is quite long. When's a good bit? Let me have a look. I haven't chopped
Fast
out
forward
bits.
a good bit. Just the Olympics have been on. Have you seen Olympic climbing?
I've been watching some... Yeah, I watched some of that on the laptop. I've gone. I love watching sport.
Right.
I watch snooker.
Yeah.
I love watching sport. I've turned into my
Did you see
grandpa
the climbing?
for sure.
Did you see climbing in the Olympics?
Yeah, I saw Shauna.
Right.
And those. Yeah, I sat there on my laptop watching it. It wasn't live. I couldn't find it on the BBC like as a live thing.
No.
It was really hard to track it down. It ended up on YouTube, like the bits to find it. So yeah.
Cool.
I did. I loved it. I particularly liked, out of the new sports, I particularly liked the BMX. Did you see the BMX freestyle?
Yeah. With the girl
Yeah, I watched that over and over again, and every time I watched it, I cried.
Yeah, she was amazing, wasn't she?
Oh my gosh, she was amazing. And then Sky Brown and the skateboarding.
So
it's been all those street sports for me. And then I love the equestrian thing, which I love, even though I kind of have to fight the whole privilege thing to a certain extent. But like the equestrian, you've got people in their 20s and in their 60s, and you've got men and women, and you've got like fillies and the stallions. There's a whole mix, what needs to happen is a bond between that horse and that human.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it goes so wide. What you could be. Anyway, yeah, I love any sport. I watch it avidly when I'm around. What made you talk about that?
Don't know. I just before you came here, I was trying to find it on the iPlayer. I just thinking, will people like us will become rich, won't we? Never climbing kicks off. No, the go-to people.
Yeah, like that. Dream on. We'll become so rich. We'll become so rich.
Once climbing takes off, books like that in Boulder, Britain will be flying off the shelf. What will you be doing? A reprint? You'll be reprinting another 50.
With all those changes, always really sort of like one comma.
I can't believe I put the comma there first time round. You'll go and buy them all back off the people.
We like that. Right, okay, I'll read a bit of this because it's a long one. So it's called Tenderness, Belaying as an Act of Love. It seems to me there's a lot we never teach about belaying. It brings to mind school sex education in the 70s. One lesson, basic diagrams, the physical mechanics. But no talk of love, care, the spiritual connection inherent in the activity. For belaying continues to get a bad rep, gets pushed aside as the not doing part of the game, a frustrating interlude before it's your turn to lead. The price you pay for someone else holding your ropes, at worst simply wasted time. It doesn't have to be so. Clearly, there are occasions when it's cold and wet and uncomfortable belaying your partner. They're taking ages. You're on a hanging stance, they keep falling off and slamming you. Your neck aches from looking up. Yet it can also be beautiful. A place of care, of meditation, of appreciation. When first introduced to climbing, I was astounded at the responsibility of the belayer. It seemed phenomenal. I was allowed to hold the ropes and be in charge of the life or death of another human being so explicitly. Because the whole purpose of the belayer is to keep the other climber alive, which is done by managing a piece of string and a holy bit of metal. It didn't seem enough. Shouldn't there be a ritual, a blessing, some formal documentation to allow anything so extreme? But no, a few words and their life in your hands. It's very lovely to care for a creature and be accorded such trust and honour.
You've shown a light onto lots of cool things in this book. All the things that sort of haven't really sort of been shown on before, haven't they?
Thank you.
Yeah, really good, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have heard that actually. That's a comment I've got from people being like, that, which people know. And they respond to it, they go, oh, that, but I've never read it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, excellent.
Thanks.
Oh, wow, amazing. Give us a final thought. I don't mind, there's no final thoughts. Yeah. The chocolate eclair.
Yeah, chocolate. Well, I know there is one chocolate eclair left.
You didn't have any.
I know. I want that one, but it is for me. It looks like it's been shaken in the bag, and now it's had 2 hours of rain on it.
It left the factory so proud, didn't it? I'm an eclair. I'm a Waco's chocolate eclair.
The chocolate's like.
I'm going to do great things instead of walking out of Oxford. With a degree under your shoulder.
Shoe pastry.
Shoe pastry. where the sort of chocolate's peeled off, and the sort of, you realise that the chocolate's just some sort of, it's like a sort of unit. It's not a, the chocolate, you sort of think it's a liquid, but it's not a liquid. Look, because you can pick it up as one.
Like a lump.
Yeah, it's more like a sort of like a lamia, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah, that's
the final thought.
The final thought is, even though it looks terrible, it's probably delicious.
I know.
You can never judge. Like we think we can judge.
Well, we enjoy. I enjoy judging. I enjoy judging Sarah Jane.
It's so enjoyable.
Next is slagging people off behind their back. Judging is my favourite thing. Come on, everyone likes that, don't they?
Do you know the thing we haven't talked about? But I mean, both of us are of an age in our 50s. Like that. There are definite thoughts about age and aging, and writing the book as someone older, having climbed and being older, and those are some areas, some thoughts, whatever. Because I think when people write books, they're about people in their peak to a certain extent, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like I'm not.
Yeah. I was driving home over.
Okay, you chat for about
Manchester today,
and
I was listening to. I just sometimes try and listen to other climate podcasts, and I listen to this one, and there's I won't say what it is in case the fucking people go off and listen to it instead of this one. But there was an interview with Ron Couk. He's this American, the American guy.
I know his book.
Does he get a book?
Very good. What? It's the only thing I know about him. I saw it on someone's shelf and I bought it.
Right, okay.
It's so cool. It's like pictures and sort of like short prose poems in very ecstatic religious style.
Right, okay, yeah. And he seems like, well, I'd never heard him interview before, and he came across really well and talked about a lot of, I was there with so-and-so, like I said, American spiritual climber, like sort of, he looks kind of part, as if there's part Indian in him, whatever. And it was really interesting. Then I listened to another one of this slightly younger climber talking, and the younger climber's kind of an interesting guy, but he didn't bring anyone else into the conversation apart from himself. And it's a real common thing that some people don't bring anyone else into the conversation. It's like sort of blog speak. That sort of Instagram me, the me. And every photograph in somebody's thing is of themselves. I think there needs to be a derogatory name for that style of Instagram account. Where every photograph is a photograph of the account owner.
Like selfie.
It's kind of it needs highlighting somehow that people don't bring anyone else into, and some people do bring other people into conversations, and it's, for me, I mean, not to judge the second guy, because that's his world, he's all about himself, but it's very common just to,
it's not very interesting, is it?
It just makes you think, what's going on in that person's head? It's all they think about is themselves. And some of the people I've had stuff read out in Jam Crack, and just like some guy talking about doing roots, and you just think, and sometimes I think, is this a pastiche of all this person does is thinks about himself all the time, and he's about falling off his route, and just in his own world. He's just in his own world, and that's all that matters, is my own world, and I'm the most important. And then you listen to Ron Cook, he sort of experienced other people and what they brought to the table.
I literally glanced his book, and it's one of the very few that I did buy, because it's exactly that. It was, it's spiritual. That makes complete sense. And the beauty. He's just trying to convey the beauty. And there's some fabulous photos of him. He was clearly a fantastic climber, being ripped, but he's also very beautiful and half naked half the time. But the pictures of him, in every one, what they're doing is shining a light in the landscape. Yeah.
And he talked about his favourite climb. He says, well, halfway along you can stop and turn around and you can see down the valley. And
that's it. So even the pictures of him, he's not the focus, and he knows he's not the focus. Yeah. So nice.
Yeah. Cheers, my friend.
Well, it's been a great pleasure.
Yeah.
And the eclair was great.
Oh, you've eaten it? I didn't even see that.
But then I realised after I munched away that I got this microphone right by my jaw. And I was going, all the way through you talking. Time to go!
Beautiful, Sarah. Thanks for that.
Well, thank you, Sarah Jane.
Thank you, Sarah. All the Bristol people all get double-barreled names, haven't they?
Yeah, you just have an extra
You've got a double-barreled first name.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Sarah Jane. Thanks for that, Sarah Jane.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it a lot.
Beautiful. Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you next Tuesday. Ooh. Okay. So I've been told that the whole see you next Tuesday thing is offensive and puerile, so okay, I'll just say goodbye from Jamcrack Podcast. See you next time. Bye.